Hello, friends. So good to be with you today. I've got a very special friend with me today. That's the best way I know how to put it. 40 years, I guess. Gosh, it seems like 40 years, something like that. Dr. Thomas Harrison. And the reason I wanted to bring him on is because I want to talk about friendship. It's such a, the older I get, it seems like the more valuable that phrase becomes. Maybe I'm just growing enough that I understand the value of it. Isn't it amazing how we learn value as we get older? I think that's one of the things as I look back, the things that I used to think was important isn't that important, and the things I really took for granted I found out to be the most important of all. And I got to say that the relationships and the friendships, the depth of those things, what they bring to my life, is just simply incredible. I think it was about 1981, something like that, that Dr. Harrison stumbled into my life. And I'm sure he probably had to look 2 or 3 times to think, what in the world do we have here? But he got me on radio and he got me on television. And he had a company called Do You Remember Enterprises? Never forget that. Well, never. I'll always remember. But he helped me produce a television show. I was on Channel 34 in Oklahoma City all of those years ago. And I know there had to have been eye rolls and everything else because I was green. Man, I was a green bean. I had no clue what I was doing, but he would prop me. And Thomas, I remember one time you told me, you said, don't drink anything on set. Don't take on your desk. Don't put any water. Don't put any coffee. Well, I didn't understand that, but it was still yet today. I can't have something on set without thinking of your words 40 years ago. But anyway, he has been a dear, dear friend. And today I want to talk about relationships. Now, let me just quickly, he's got a list here, and hang on, Thomas, just hang on for a second. I got a list here of things that define you that I don't even know if I have time on this whole podcast to go through all of it. But very good. Dr. Thomas Harrison, education leader, higher education, administration, serving academic dean, director of academic affairs, vice president for institutional advancement, various colleges, universities, following a 20-year career in ministry, managing radio, television stations, which is true. I got to watch that on several. As a matter of fact, I remember coming to Tulsa, and I got to be, you had a panel there. And I'm sitting on this panel, and it's hilarious because I'm thinking, don't ask me anything because with these other guys, I got nothing to say.
You helped us dedicate a TV station in Tulsa, and I'm very grateful for that.
No, that's right. That's what it was. That was a wonderful thing. Well, hang on. I'm not through yet. Okay. He's worked for and served as an instructor for Oral Roberts University, Central Bible College, Evangel University, University of Phoenix, and others. He has received educational instruction and experience from Oral Roberts University, University of Oklahoma, St. Louis University, University of Phoenix, and that was all of the degrees basically that line up your name. General manager for radio and television stations across Arkansas and Oklahoma. His work in television has earned him a Telly Award and Angel Award. He is an author of Move Up, which we're going to talk about that here in just a little bit. Excellent book. Let me see, which is Factual Accounts of Courage, Hope, Inspiration. Great book. We'll talk about that, but I'm not through. There's more. His work has been featured in Wall Street Journal, USA Today, online, Christian Broadcasting Network, 700 Club, the Tulsa World, Oklahoman, and scores of newspapers, radios, televisions, internet outlets. He is ordained with the Assemblies of God, and I really won't personally hold that against you, but he has served in various sized churches in Oklahoma, Missouri, all over the place. Him and his lovely wife, Kathy, which she's probably the only thing that really brought value to his life. They make their home in Missouri in the Ozarks. Whew. Man, you've been busy. You've been busy.
Sir.
But again, I think of those things, and I don't even know if you remember this because you were managing a television station, or I'm sorry, radio station in Bethany, Oklahoma. That
Right.
was I forget which one it even was.
KJIL 104.9.
Yes, that's what it was. And you allotted me a spot from like 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock at night. It was live. Oh my God. And it was during the Iran hostage crisis. And so everything was elevated at that particular time. And I made a couple of statements like, we need to just go bomb that place and take them back. And we had call-ins where people were going, "Are you even a Christian?" But it introduced me to live radio, and all of that being said, my dear friend of over 40 years, Dr. Thomas Harrison, and welcome. I'm so glad that you're here.
I've been following your career, and I've been reading your books and watching you online, and what you're doing with these podcasts is just fantastic. You send me these, and I comment back, and I'm just so pleased at how you have found opportunity within the body of Christ to bring wisdom and knowledge, bring business acumen all together with a great anointing. And you do that so easily. And I'm very proud of you, Jerry.
Well, it's been part of the thing. And we'll get an opportunity to cover this a little bit more in a few moments, but you've actually had an opportunity on several occasions to mentor me in my development. I've always known that there was something more. And even as we look at social media, I know, God, I know there's some things I'm supposed to do here. I know it. And
in reality, Jerry, we've not even scratched the surface of social media. What we know today is just this much, and this is ever expanding. Even while we're talking, there are new avenues, new things being invented, created, new platforms emerging. And so the time to act is now, and you're doing it.
How do you see, and again, we'll get to friendship in a minute, but how do you see social media developing? I mean, think back when the FCC was giving away license, what was it, in the 20s?
Oh, they were, sure. And originally the FCC was under the Commerce Department. So anything the Commerce Department does is to generate revenue for the government. So they had an idea that if we could begin licensing radio stations, eventually it morphed into the Federal Communication Commission, and the FCC Acts of 1927 and 1934 really mushroomed into the industry that we have today. So they were giving those licenses away, and now you can't beg, borrow, or otherwise acquire them. And it is such and most of them are owned by multi-chain conglomerates that they're cross programming, and they're doing a lot of things there. So the industry has changed so much since I entered, and I started in front of the television camera when I was 5 years old, and I have been in and around radio and television all my life since then. I have 2 degrees in media, and I love it. I love it. I love it.
Yeah. I think what's so sad about that is I think back of those times is how people didn't take advantage of it.
Oh,
and
true.
It was something that was there. I mean, the world took advantage of it, and and the church somehow demonized it to where they could not see. I don't know if they were just lacking with any kind of prophetic vision. They could not see the value of it. And of course, I mean, now I look at social media. I remember when I was on your station, you charged me every month. I had to pay you to be on there. And but what we're doing now is people have an opportunity to do it free.
Well, and here's the thing. So most of my adult life, I've been talking to churches and ministries about having a media ministry and that kind of thing. We did that on radio. We did that on television. We're doing that in social media and that kind of thing. And just as you said, churches were demonizing this. No, it is of the devil. We don't want it. But then 2020 happened, and COVID drove every church from small church to mega church to television, because that was the only way, many states, the only legal way that they had opportunity to have church service was online. So all of these churches that have said, no, we don't ever want to be on television, suddenly were on the internet with a little camera and a little microphone, and that was it. So we have to thank COVID for exploding the social media scene. And now everyone, you go anywhere and anything happens, what is happening? People have their phones and they're holding up recording. Everyone is a videographer. Everyone has a YouTube channel now, and they sell their footage to the news. And it is quite different now. The landscape is quite different. But also, on the other hand, what an immense opportunity. Just about everyone has a phone. Everyone has an internet connection in their home or in their car or through their device. And so there's so many platforms, and it's so open for the propagation of the gospel to come into every home. And literally, because I used to think years ago that this gospel shall be preached to all nations. I'm like, there's not enough people to go to every nation, to preach to every tribe and every nationality and everything. But now it is social media.
We're there,
going into every tribe and every nation.
Well, you are kind of a media guru. Where do you see this going? I mean, obviously we look back and it's the way it's evolving, like what you said a while ago. As we speak, it's expanding and growing. Where are we going?
Who would have ever thought when all this happened that we would ever have a president of the United States tweeting and sending messages from the White House?
That's true.
We would never think that, right? So, it is, whether that's right or wrong, this is not the platform to discuss that. But talk about the stamp of approval that if the president can indeed do that, then every other Joe citizen can do the same thing. So, we have the Google glasses, and we have some other things, and we're even doing, other people are even doing implants so that artificial intelligence can be bridged with human intelligence. That is a whole new platform that is emerging. I'm not recommending that by any state.
Stop for just a second. Explain what you just said.
Yeah. So there are individuals who are implanting electronic devices into the brains of individuals so that artificial intelligence and human intelligence can be merged. Now, I'm not an expert on that, and I am not advocating that. I am not recommending that. I see
you go first,
but that is an experiment that is being conducted as we speak. And there are individuals who have agreed to be the test subjects for that. Pretty scary. Now, I'm not an expert on that, so we won't go any further on that. But as technology, we have children with iPhones.
Right.
And
they know how to use them.
Yes, and we have children with iPhones that are communicating at a far better level than maybe what we are.
Right.
But so we're literally putting the device, and I read something the other day that said the invention of the iPhone has turned everyone's posture from looking straight forward to looking down.
Wow.
And you constantly see people looking down on their device. And we have changed a nation's posture. Attention spans are like that. Because, we see the news. Now we want the next feature. Right. And what do? We scroll on our phone. Either we do that on Facebook or the news or music or whatever. And we're TikTok and all those others. They're looking for those short 30-second or less features that capture people's attention, even for a nanosecond. Captures their attention, because it's all, and you have to look at it, go follow the money. And that's where the advertisers, they're looking to promote their products and services, and whoever can do that, and whoever can deliver the most audience for that is what they go. So we've changed how we view news. We've changed how we communicate. The device that you and I carry. I no longer wear a wristwatch. I no longer carry a camera. I no longer have to have a personal computing device or a calculator. I can check my health on my iPhone. I can communicate 3 or 4 different ways just on the surface of my iPhone without opening any of the apps.
Yeah.
I can tell where my wife is located, and my family can tell where I'm located. I can tell where I know where my keys and briefcase are because I have air tags on them. And
Wow.
so, I mean, it is just, I can see who's at my door. And
yeah, and you notice I have a watch. However, let me just explain this. This actually is a watch that's used for the golf course, and it tells me the yardage.
Why am I not surprised?
Yeah, but you know, you're right though. This is sometime back, I was talking to a young couple. They came here and they were going to go someplace, and I proceeded to tell them, now you go down to this corner, you turn left. And they're just standing there looking at me with this blank look on their face, and they just held up their phone and they said, we know how to get there. And I thought, man, we are not in Kansas anymore.
That is so true. And just to amplify that point, I was at an event, and it was a Christmas party kind of a thing, and we had various things. So each team had a icon that they used. It was kind of their game piece that they moved along. So I had one team who traveled quite a bit, and their icon was an atlas. So I pulled an atlas out of my car. I keep an atlas. I keep a paper atlas in my car for when I go places and there's no cell service. I gave them that. I put it on the table. Everyone at the table just looked at that like they had never seen a book of maps together. They were turning the pages and go, "Oh, I live here," and the rest of the room were like, "You've never seen an atlas before?"
Yeah, let them try to fold a map. That's
yeah, exactly.
That's when you know your age, when you can fold a map. Oh gosh. Well, I'll tell you something. I'm very excited. I know a lot of people are afraid, but I'm not. I'm telling you, I have such a sense of anticipation, of excitement. I mean, I was back in 1966 watching Star Trek, and I was fascinated by a computer that could actually respond to you. And of course, it was all a dream then. I mean, it was like I had heard the story. They said that NASA came to him one time and said, "How do you open your doors?" And
yes.
Of course, at that time, they just had somebody on both sides. But I'm just telling you right now, if I go to the store and it doesn't open for me, I walk right into it. It is true. Like the things that were a dream in those days suddenly have become a reality. And I'm excited about it because I truly believe we are at a pivotal point in history, a place no one else has ever seen before, nor can even understand. And I think the potential for us to truly touch the world in real time is here. It's literally right in our hands, and the opportunities to do things. And we spark one another. Of course, this is, again, if I could kind of parlay over into friendship, I think the connection that we have with one another is very useful in creating new on-ramps, new opportunities, new ideas. It's like I can talk to you for a few moments and suddenly you'll spark something in me that I hadn't even thought of before. And I think the relationships, of course, I believe with all my heart, those relationships are the greatest gift that God gives you. I tongue in cheek, I say it like this. I say, when God wants to bless you, he sends someone into your life. And when Satan wants to curse you, he sends someone into your life. But all the movement of your life takes place through those relationships.
And I remember that is so true. I remember something you told me years and years and years and years ago, that those relationships, and when you are inspired and iron is sharpening iron, as we say in the Christian world, it is the anointing that brings that out. And it's the better and deeper the relationship is, the more responsibility is on that person to help feed that. So I can have a one-on-one conversation with anyone selected at random, but I can't have a deep conversation with someone about ideas and concepts, and unless there is friendships there. And we really were created for friendship, just as God, our Father, created man so that man could be friends with God. Now, just think of that for a while. God needed man and needed the friendship with man. So that model that we have, and we also need people, because otherwise we turn into a hermit, and we do not do ourselves justice. We
I have a
are
question
indeed
for
rich
you.
men with friends.
You know, the phone has been very wonderful on one side, but it's like people stop talking to each other. I remember one time I had 3 teenagers in the back seat of my car, and they're very quiet. And I said, "Why aren't you guys talking?" And they said, "We are." They were texting each other. And I thought, how bizarre. I mean, we've lost, and on one hand, we've gained something, but on the other hand, I feel like we've lost something precious from the standpoint of being able to communicate. Because can you have, I mean, would you speak to that for a moment, just concerning, can you have a deep friendship without communication?
Well, I
Without,
don't know that without communication is possible. One of the questions that I ask when I teach is that is it possible for a leader to be a communicator who does not have the ability to speak? He physically cannot speak for some reason. Is that person, do we still classify that person as a communicator? Well, the short answer to that is yes, because there are other forms of communication other than just speaking. And so if indeed we have turned into a society that is Google and Siri based, when I'm traveling, I ask Siri all kinds of questions. Where am I? How far to the next exit? What's the atomic weight of a penny? These guys. I've asked Siri to tell me stories. I've asked Siri to read me a joke. And if you ask Siri to read you not jokes, it keeps on going for about 20 jokes, and you just one after the other, after the other, after the other. So communication in any form is still communication. So the teenagers in the back, they were having a great time. And we had a family gathering, and an elderly relative of mine was in the room, and we all were on our phones from ages 12 to whatever. And there was only one person in the room that wasn't on the phone. And we all had a great time. And the elderly person in the room said, "Well, maybe you could come over to my house again and I'll be on your phone, so at least I can see you." But I remember, yeah, really. So I remember the days, Jerry, and you do too, that I would ask my grandfather, I'd ask my spiritual father, I would say, "Could you tell me a story? Tell me what it was like in the old days. Tell me what it was like when I came into the world. Tell me what it was like before I came into the world, and what was life like." And I would hang on those stories, and I remember those stories, and I've retold them. And so part of that we've lost, but yet I have a whole network of people that I send a message to on Sunday mornings. Some of them I have never met.
well,
They will never ever meet. And they will say, "You gave me an idea for a sermon," or "Can I use this in my book that I'm writing," or that kind of thing. So we have formed these artificial communities. And a community used to be revolve around an address and a zip code. And no more, we're exchanging data one to the other, whether it's bits and bytes, whether it's audio or video, or just communication data. We define communities differently, and they're no longer geographically bound.
Can you develop, though, the intimacy of a relationship with that model?
I think you can, and I think, and here's an example of good and bad for that. As I told you, in my network, I have people in my network I only know through my phone. Occasionally, we'll talk by a telephone. I've never seen them. Maybe we'll do something like this. But they share prayer requests with me. They say, "Hey, I'm going through this. Do you have any advice for me?" And then on the other side of that, people can use that to their disadvantage. They may flirt and begin an unhealthy romantic relationship with someone by texting. And so those things are not healthy, but yet we can create that. So I've got, some people in my network that we hold each other accountable, and we send each other a report of the things that we view, and we have access to each other's material, so that at any moment we say, hand me your device. We want to see what you've been looking at. So I think that's healthy. And Kimmy, it's like
Just a minute. Well, but and it may be that both has to be embraced. I'm thinking of my relationship with you over the years. I talk to you and you have me laughing. It's like, seriously. It's a relationship that I have been so comfortable with. I could not see you for a year or 2 years.
Sure. And we just pick up where we left off.
Yeah, we were never apart. And I'm that is my biggest concern, is that the relationship aspect of it can be lost through technology. Or, obviously we can develop a sense of trust or a sense of community online, but there's something about looking at someone or talking to them or having them cry with you.
That is true. I have a young man that has a family and all that, and I needed to make a day trip from here to Tulsa and back. And in my younger day, I would do that. I wouldn't think anything about it. Now I'm like, I need to take someone along with me just to help share the time. And my wife was unable to go with me. And so we had a great time, 3.5 hours, and it was wonderful. We talked about everything. We talked about nothing. And so those kind of relationships, he thinks that is the height of his life, that he had an opportunity to share a car ride with me, and that we went to do this thing and turned around and came back. We had dinner before we came back. And to me, that was great, because I'm seeing and I'm imparting to him and helping him. But to me, I've had multiple of those kind of things happen that had never, ever happened in his life. He thinks I'm like the prince or a governor or something.
Well, absolutely.
And absolutely. He talks about that nonstop. I got to go on a trip with him.
I had heard it said before that relationship is spelled Time.
Yes.
And if I could just throw in a shameless plug for golf.
Oh,
which I know you're going to want to go right back out there. Because it's even when you just meet somebody for a lunch or just a brief thing, maybe 15, 20, 30 minutes tops. But with golf, you literally are sitting there with somebody for 4 hours.
You have moved into their home, Jerry, is what happened.
Well, that's about the truth. There's no fluff after about an hour. You're in the scratch and spit stage. It just, nothing matters. And I have seen some of the guys that we've gone to play. They started out as acquaintances, but over a period of spending time together, they became buds.
Sure.
It was like there was a bond in them. And I just, that's my biggest concern with the technology, is that it doesn't damage the understanding of in-depth communion, relationships. Because I see with you, I've just known you for so long. I truly feel like it's more of a communion than it is it's a partaking of a wonderful relationship that I don't ever want to lose that.
Sure.
I don't want to lose that. And I don't get to do that with everybody.
Well, and we have to be selective, because, we all have the same 168 hours in every week. I have the same, you have the same. The only difference is how we use that, how do
you manage it? How do you manage yours?
Sometimes parts of that are managed by others. So there are expectations of other people have of me. I'm required to go to work. Well, I'm not required to go to work. It's really a necessity that I do work. And so I have family activities, and I just realized that I have to make time for what's important, And that could be financially important as well as spiritually and
Mm-hmm.
emotionally important. And there are times I'm an ambivert. I'm not an extrovert or an introvert. I am an ambivert, which means I'm both.
Okay.
Most of the time, I am an outgoing kind of guy, but there are times that I just have to retreat. I just have to get in the car and I
That's
have to
me.
go somewhere where I don't hear anyone. And when I go in the car, I don't have the radio on. I have Sirius
Yeah,
XM and all kind of my favorite radio stations on. But there are
that's
other
me.
times I just have to unplug. And uh, and then the reverse of that, Jerry, there are times my wife will ask, "What's wrong with you?" And I said, "I haven't been with people this week." And my wife will say, "Go find some people to be with so that you can act normal. So act yourself." And so I will go out somewhere and I will try to find some people to hang around with because I just have to be with people. And my wife was telling me just a few minutes ago. She said, "You could start a conversation with literally anyone as you walk by." She said, "You've already talked to like 5 people on our walk already, and you don't even know them." And I go, "Well, I don't know what to respond to that. Say it's just that sometimes I need people, and then sometimes I just need to be by myself."
Yeah. Well, the relationship, and of course this is something I want to get into. I wanted to ask you about it because I think the need to have a relationship. Of course, you get into the situation of being a mentor and uh, being under someone, being over someone. I had felt it like this, a healthy way of doing it. I felt like if you only have people over you, you'll grow up insecure. You'll get to where you can't even make a decision. If you only have people under you, you'll become arrogant and people can't talk to you. And so you really need both of those things. How do you see, can you address just for a few minutes concerning what it is to be a mentor to somebody?
Sure.
Do you think that's where you should start, is to
And,
do you submit to someone else first and then become a mentor? How do you arrange that?
well, and I think yes, I'll answer that, but let me talk about what you just said. Um, there needs to be a constant flow as water flows. And if we are all the time giving out, but we are not taking in, after a while, that's pretty shallow. And so, no, none of us ever
Mhm.
reach a plateau to where we cannot be better. And so we need mentors to help us be better. Um, I had several mentors along the way that we shared life together. We had keys to each other's houses, and we would take trips together. And anything in my life that you like, it's been the result of someone working in me. And I know that I can't keep this. If I hoard this, then I do myself a disservice. And so, you've got to give out. And just as I mentioned, the young man who we took a trip with, I, I probably wouldn't have never picked him out if I would just, it was a room of people. I probably never would have picked him out. But through a series of circumstances, he came into my life. And I think God uses us in ways we don't understand. And a prayer I prayed last year and into this year, I said, "God, I will help anyone you send to me, and I will be anyone's mentor that you send to me. And I'm not necessarily looking for someone, but I will help anyone who sends me." And I think part of that is if you find someone that you admire, and I've done this before. I read this from John Maxwell. I've set up some meetings with some people, and I said, "Could I have 30 minutes of your time because I have a series of questions to ask you, and I will only take 30 minutes, and that's it." So we arranged a meeting. I set my timer. 30 minutes was over. I reached in my pocket and I gave them a thank you note. And inside the thank you note, I had a $100 bill. And I said, "And this is for you for your time." Now, granted, I don't do that all the time. I haven't done
Right.
that in a while. And many times they've said, "Well, if there's any money in that, you better keep it because I'm not going to take your money." So I recognize there are people who they have something that I want. Their knowledge, their experience, how they work with people. There's something that I want. And so I've gone to people in the past and said, um, can we develop a relationship that is more than just friendship? Can we become mentors? Would you be my mentor? And then I've had people come to me and said, I sure could use your help. And I said, well, if I can mentor you, we'll do that. There's some people I see once or twice a year, other people I see all the time. And so I think if we, it's like money, we can accumulate money, but if we don't do something with that money, it only has surface face value. It never increases. And if we put it in the mattress, it could decrease. Mold and termites and bugs could get it, and we wouldn't have anything. So we've got to do something with that money to make it profitable and more profitable for us.
Do you have more than one mentor?
I did during a point in my life, and then they died. And so I'm just like, and I still mourn to this day their passing. And I know that heaven was their reward, and I have no regret at all for that, and I'm not mad at God for that at all. But I'm like, there's so many things I wanted to talk to you about. There's so much more that I thought, and then I'm at this point now where that part of my life is pretty shallow, and I thought, well, I suppose now it is my turn to amp up what I'm doing and further help other people.
But how do you maintain that though? You have someone, of course, you get to a certain age. It's like, I've been in ministry for over 50 years, which is hard for me to even say. But you come to a point to where, like you said, all of the mentors that's been in your life, eventually they're gone, you know? And so in that setting, because is it important to maintain a level of people that are mentors to you? In other words, do you continue to pursue that? How does that work? Because it seems like, and it's not a matter of just severe accountability, but just someone that gives oversight, I guess, to your stuff. I'm throwing out this broad net there. Can you kind of describe what they do? I mean, you said that you gave them the keys to your house. So, I mean, what's the level there that they hold that in your life?
Well, and I've taken them to the hospital on more than one occasion, and I've been on the cell phone with them and know they had a medical emergency, and I drove to their house, picked them up, put them in my car. I was there with them. People thought we were related because they saw us together so much. And our wives, when they were together, they were just like, our husbands have turned into children. So, but that is a certain level. Obviously, I don't give keys to my house to everyone. My family has keys to my house, or the garage door remote code, or something like that. So but it's like trust. It develops over time. It doesn't happen immediately. I had a guy helping me at my house, working on some projects at my house, and I said, I've got to, be gone during the day to do some work, but here's my American Express card, and anything you need, you go to the store and get it. And I gave him my security code number for my American Express, and he looked at me like I had just stood on my head or something. And he said, you trust me with your credit card? I said, I'm trusting you with my house while I'm gone. Might as well trust you with my credit card. It'll have a pattern of where you've been. I can dispute any charge. You're not going to charge more than what my limit is. What's the difference if I gave you a handful of cash versus my credit card? No one had ever done that to him, Jerry.
Yeah.
And so he just, and man, he thought he was, and he was judicious with what he purchased with that, supplies and tools and things.
But see, that you're bringing up an area that I've never heard anybody talk about before, and that is the level of closeness that you allow a mentor into your life? Now we'll get into being a mentor in a minute, but allowing someone over you that you look to trust. I don't know that I've ever heard anyone talk about what that looks like, what the shades of gray there. How do you define that?
Yeah. Well, for instance, I was telling my brother, I have two great brothers-in-law who are as close as we can be, and they are to each other as well. And one of them is, we've said, hey, when something happens, would you be the executor of our estate? He goes, yeah, sure, be happy to. So he's got copies of all of our documents and all of the wills and all of the legal papers and all of that he keeps. And then I said, I also want to put you on a Find My, because I want you to know where I am at any moment of the day. And I want you to be able to do that, because it's not that I don't go anywhere where I shouldn't, or not that I don't talk to anyone that I shouldn't talk to. I just want him to know that I trust him enough, not only with my life now, but with whatever that we'll have left over when this life is done.
Wow. Should people pursue that that level of relationship? And again, I don't want to just prolong something, but I've just never heard anybody talk about this before, because it was always a little bit muddy to me. You said, I'd like for you to be kind of a mentor to me, or somebody that I kind of submit myself to. And then, you see each other once every couple of months and say, hello, how you doing? That type thing. But you're talking about a whole new level of relationship there. And should it be, have we been doing it wrong?
I don't think we've been doing it wrong. I just think it's been shallow to that point. And it's not wrong. It's not wrong to be friends with someone. It's not wrong to,
no, of course
to want to bless people. But you have to show them at some point that you trust them. Yeah. And, and you trust them enough with your medical information, with your social security number, with your bank account numbers and that kind of thing. But they have to earn that trust.
Right.
It's not just something that you give that,
right. Of course.
So I just think, I think a part of that is also accountability, that if you want to know about me, you ask the people that know me. I can give you my resume and I can give you all my stuff, but until that point comes where, you really want to know me, ask the people that associate with me.
Do you equate it to just being a father? Is that the model?
I don't know I'm qualified to answer that question. I think so, but then I've got people that I'm close to, that I'm closer to them than some of my family.
Sure, I understand that.
Yeah. And that seems odd, and they ask, well, what relationship are you to them? And I go, friend. And, so, and friend to me doesn't mean, it isn't like, it means much deeper than that, than just someone that I'm friendly to. Because I'm friendly to a lot of people.
Of course.
But I am not friends with everyone.
I talk about the need for a father. Let me just kind of briefly tell you something that happened to me. And it really was impactful in my life, because I remember, of course, I pastored my first church. I was 18 years old.
Yeah.
And I joke with everybody. I said I didn't hardly know whether Jesus was hung or shot, but I desperately was in love with Jesus, but I lacked a father kind of to say, here's what you need to do. So I just did it. I mean, whatever it was, I just jumped out there and, just a wild ass running all over the place. But something happened that I didn't recognize until later. I knew there was something missing in me. And I think that every young man needs this from a father. Now, that's from a spiritual father, but even from my natural father. I want to tell you, I could not have been more loved. I could not have been more accepted, but there was something that he did not give me. Mm-hmm. I needed him to acknowledge that I was a man. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't get it on my own. I could get everything else, but I couldn't get that. And I struggled with that. I could see you as a man, and we could be the exact same age doing the exact same thing. I could see you as a man, but it's like I lack that in myself. I struggled even up through the age when I was doing manly things. I was taking responsibility, but I struggled with the acknowledgement of my manhood, And of course, I mean, you look at the Jewish culture, what do? They bring those kids in there with their bar mitzvah at like 13 years old, and they all declare, you are now a man. Now, they're not putting them in charge of anything. They're putting them in the broom closet, but they acknowledge that. And it's almost like they're the struggle that men have today, not so much girls, but boys, they need acknowledgement. I mean, you can go to the fatherless generation, like in prison, and they will say to you, they say, I don't care if you like me at all, but you will acknowledge me as a man. Sure. And it's like there's this craving inside. I'm going to get that if I have to do it with violence. I'm going to get that. And so there was a need. And I think that's one of the biggest things in a man's life is to have someone who's in that father position that can look at them and say, your time has come.
Oh, and I think so. And I think, and I think when you're friends and mentors, you can have a relationship absent from family. That, this is not my son, this is not my nephew, this is not anyone that I'm related to. So you don't have those confines that, Jerry, I heard as a young man that a greeting card company sent greeting cards to a prison for Mother's Day, and they wanted the prisoners to send Mother's Day cards. And so the prisoners were very well received. They said, hey, this is great. So they sent greeting cards to their mothers. So when it was Father's Day, greeting card companies sent an equal number of greeting cards to the prisons for Father's Day, and hardly any of the inmates took the cards to send to their fathers. Now, I heard that as a young man, and I'm thinking, if you want to pick a fight with a man, you talk about his mother, and there'll be an instant fight. You talk about his dad, apparently there may not be a fight. So I don't know. And the sad thing, I guess in my own life, I had to realize that my father and his father, no one taught them what we're talking about, and so they didn't know how to be a father. And whatever father figure that they had, and of course, books weren't available and that kind of thing. The media wasn't available, so it was real shallow. Now, it's a different story. But I think, Jesus talked about that the regard of the apostles, that they need to care for the widows and orphans. And that if they weren't taking care of the widows and orphans, they were not doing the work that they were called to do.
Yeah.
And here I'm thinking, and I don't say this for any particular pleasure. I've written about it in my book, Move Up, is I go to places and I see someone eating by themselves. It just breaks my heart.
Sure.
I don't know what the situation is.
Right.
And there's one particular restaurant that I frequent, and the owner of that restaurant, he knows what I'm up to. So I go there and I go, hey, the person over there all by themselves, I want to take care of that meal. I want to put a tip on that. Don't you dare say a word. It's just between us. And so this one particular owner does that. And, I've sat back and watched them. And for some of them, they've lost their mate or they don't have any family. It breaks my heart when I was in the pastorate, when we would go to hospitals and there would be people at the hospitals who didn't have a church home, who didn't have family. They were just up there all by themselves. And that just breaks my heart, Jerry, to see that kind of thing. So I think many of us are working and seeking that. And, and if anyone's watching, listening, if you've not had the greatest relationship with the Father, you can start over. You find you some other man to help you in your life, because there are plenty of them out there. And some of these men that you may be asking, they would love for their children to ask you questions like you're about to ask them and have that type of relationship. So I think, You know, in the kingdom of God, Jerry, there is no lack, and there also is no waste.
I was thinking of, we've gone through a time, especially our church time, to where we begin to hear about people that were assuming roles of apostle, and I think that term got a little wacky there for a while. And they were I'm an apostle over 300 people, over 500 people, and it's like that doesn't last very long. I don't think you
No.
can. Of course, I see what they're talking about. They're not talking about as someone who was sent to accomplish something, but they're talking about someone who is filling that role of overseer in a group of ministers or people or whatever. But I don't think you can be a father to people that you don't know.
Right.
I think that places a bigger responsibility on there to be more fathers.
Sure.
But I see these people as, well, I'm a father over 1,000. No, I'm thinking, no, you're not. You
Well,
don't even know their name, much less all this other stuff. How can you claim to be a father? And truly, that's we had a young man back a couple of years ago. He kind of broke loose from the group that we were with because somebody else had provided a broader vision. We're going to do this and that, and he came back last year and he said, I discovered that really all they wanted was just my money.
Oh, that's
And
right.
There was no community, which I think a father gives more than he takes.
Sure.
Period. I think when you reach the element where the father or that person in your life is taking more than they give, there's something out of balance with that relationship. And so I kind of wanted to ask you about that because you may not jump on the title as such, but you've been a father to a lot of people over the years, people that have come to you, they've looked to you for counsel, they've trusted in you, you've given oversight as gently or as directly as they were open to it. But I'd like for you just to, I don't know, maybe I'm just looking to exhaust this particular subject because, like I said, people, nobody's talking about this. And so it's almost like you reach this place and you don't know what to do with yourself. And I feel like there's a need for mentors. There's a need for fathers. And maybe it's the fact that we don't know how to submit to them or we don't know how to be that person.
Well, it can start by sharing coffee or sharing lunch and then see where it goes from there. Because if you can't share 20 minutes with someone or if you can't share an hour with someone, and if you don't feel something, and I'm not led by feelings necessarily, but if you don't have a witness in your spirit, as we say in the Christian world, or if you don't see the common bond between you, then it's not for you. But if it's someone, if you're sharing coffee or lunch with someone, you think, man, I get energized every time I'm with this person, or I think they need so much help. If we had a physical ailment and we asked the doctor for help, there's no shame in that. But if we have an inward need of someone to help us develop as a man or to help us develop as a minister, there's nothing wrong with asking another man to do that and find what you wanted. I had, I don't talk about this often, and I think this is the first time in public I've ever talked about this, but when I was a very young man, a teenager, there was someone that was related to me who lost their job, lost their employment, because they did not dress correctly. Mm-hmm. And that so impacted me that this person didn't even know that was the reason why they lost their job. It was brought out later. And I thought, that's the day I started wearing sports coats. And that's the day I started taking better care of myself as far as the clothing that I wear, because
I've known you for 40 years. I've never seen you in jeans.
So someone asked my wife, says, well, does he wear like shorts at home? And she goes, no. The only shorts he has are swimming shorts.
I'd give
that wanna go
$100 for
swimming.
that picture right now. I'm telling you.
Yeah. So no. And so, but Jerry, I've thought about that so many times that no one at that company said,
Yeah.
"Hey, this is how we dress." And for whatever reason, the person didn't see that with everything else going
Right.
on. I think they were so focused on the job, they didn't think about the
Right.
packaging that they bring to that job.
Right.
So, so yeah, I don't think there's any harm with that. And if 2 or 3 people tell you no, then you haven't asked the right person yet.
Right.
You know, I was I was on another similar program like this, and we had some call-ins, and those are always call-in questions. Those are always dangerous because you
Yeah.
hold your breath, hoping it's a question you can answer. So we had a call like similar like this, and someone called in and said, "Well, ask the guest the um, my friend and I are older, and we want to get married. We can't find any men to marry, and we're financially successful and all this other thing. We don't have any men friends. We don't
Oh,
know where to go for men and all this other kind of stuff." And I'm like, so my answer back to them was, "Do you go anywhere where men hang out?" And they were like, "Well, what do you mean?" And I said, "Do you go to car shows? There's usually a car show every weekend. And guys love cars, whether I'm a classic car guy, there are others into muscle cars and hot rods and all that stuff.
I never thought about that.
You want to go where the men are. And so is there a Bass Pro anywhere near you? Go to Bass Pro and just hang around, look, and find some. And I said, go to Lowe's and just take your shopping cart up and down the aisles and find,
Mm.
find. I said, you have to go where the men
Yeah.
are. But if you only stay with your little church circle and that you
Yeah.
already know the 4 or 5 people that are in your church, you'll never find anyone.
Yeah.
You've got to go somewhere. So
So true.
when you see people that are successful, whether at your work or in your church or whatever, go find those people and find out where they hang out and find out if you can join them. And one of the things that you told me early on when you were becoming serious about golf is that you had an opportunity, or either you or a friend of yours had an opportunity to play golf with Oral Roberts, and that's highlighted the interest in playing golf in order to meet people. And I'm thinking, like, who wouldn't have wanted an opportunity
Right.
to play golf with Oral Roberts?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wasn't me. It was McCorkle.
Oh, okay.
Well,
That
it
would
was
sound
him.
like
And
him.
he didn't have a clue how to play.
Yeah.
And I thought, I cannot believe that.
Missed it.
Yeah. Missed
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. You missed it. So,
Yeah. Well, I really feel that this is, in this day and time, people have become so separated. They become so isolated, even if their connection is through the internet or through social media, whatever the case is, still they become isolated to where they really don't know how to open up to friendships. Um, can I ask you your idea on a sense of priorities here? If I'm looking at being a mentor, being under a mentor, or seeking friendship, and I know this is probably not even a valid question, where would you go first?
well, I think if you begin praying for this mentor, it's kind of like if you began, if you're wanting to be married and you're a single person, if you start praying for that person that you cannot see, that is faith. And so you begin praying that God protects that person. God brings that person to your path.
Right.
God protects them and prospers them, that kind of thing. If you begin that earnest prayer of, God, there's somebody that I need. I don't even know who it is that I need. And then if you will begin just, there's one thing if you need friends, but if you're looking at a mentor, that's a new level of friendship. And
Mhm.
so there's a commitment to that. It's almost like you're getting married to a person because you will share life together, and you will share, I don't want to say secrets, but you will share
Yeah.
private things about your life that you wouldn't share with just anyone in public.
Let me ask you a question here with that.
Yeah,
Is it the mentor's responsibility to seek out someone to be a mentor to, or is it the person who
I
needs
think it's the other way
mentor?
around. I think it's the guy. I think it's the guy or lady who needs a mentor, because I could go up to someone, and now there are occasions when I see, someone that I think has talent. I have the ability to recognize talent. I have the
Sure.
ability to recognize an anointing on someone's life for ministry and that kind of thing. And so I will try to get a little closer to them and just say, hey, what kind of books do you read?
Right.
Where do you hang out? What other thing. So if that begins to be reciprocal, then I think, okay, there might be something that I go, hey, if you're ever working on a project I can help you with. So I kind of open those doors like that. But otherwise, I just don't have this vision that I see people, oh, you need a mentor and you need a mentor.
Right.
I'm expecting those to come to me, because I need them to be serious. And I think sometimes that comes from a level of brokenness that they have been without for so long, that they need someone. And I think when you find that someone, you definitely know that you have found someone to help you. There's a man that's come into my life, and we have been sharing experiences together, and I'm helping him in a marvelous way. So he sat in yesterday on a recording session that I had. And so did two 45-minute recordings. And after it was all over, he was complimenting me. And I said, well, I've been around for a while. I've done radio and TV and that kind of thing. And I said, well, let me tell you something. I wrote the scripts for both of those. I only put into words that I know how to pronounce. There are certain words I do not know how to pronounce. I cannot pronounce them correctly. I embarrass myself. So this great voice is great. He's looking at me like I am crazy. I said, no, you have to realize that when you do something public facing like that, people expect you to be, coherent and all these other.
Right.
And I gave him a list of like 5 words I cannot pronounce. And I said, I've tried. It just doesn't work out. I don't use those words. Those words don't even come into my mind anymore. I work around them. And he's just laughing. And I go, you think it's funny, but when you get into my position and you're given a card and it's got one of those words on it, you won't think it's funny. Yeah. So I said, I write my own scripts. And I said, if someone wants me to voice something, I read the script. And when people ask me that, can you be the voiceover for this, or can you read the script for this? I give them all the same answer. I said, just don't put any big words in there that I can't pronounce. And so
I have 3 doctorates, but I still can't pronounce that word.
And I'm not going to tell you. And so I'm not going to tell this forum what those words are. But, we're all that way, because when we present ourselves public facing, we need to be polished and professional. Yeah. But behind the scenes, I don't mind telling the guy, hey, I can't say these words. I have a mental block for some reason that I can't produce those words. Yeah. And I don't know what that is, but it hasn't hindered my success because I don't think about those words, But and I had a lady years ago who was in one of my public speaking classes. She had a very thick Hispanic accent, and I was giving her feedback on her speeches and everything. She called me and she said, I'm so sorry for my thick Hispanic accent. I go, no, your accent is beautiful. It is lovely. It sounds so poetic and charming. And I said, why are you apologizing? And she said, all my life I have been told my accent got in my way. I said, well, let me tell you how to work around that. And she goes, please. And so I told her, I said, when you come to a word you don't know how to pronounce in English, go into Spanish and just say, I don't know how to say this in English, but in my language, blah, 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 blah. And I said, and the Anglos will go crazy about that on how you've done that. All your Hispanic friends will laugh and smile because they know exactly what you're doing. And I said, it will come across so beautiful. And Jerry, it's interesting. She said, I've never had an Anglo tell me that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's what a father does. I do. You don't, with your children, you don't control them. You just counsel them. You're there to comfort. You're there to support. I'm in your cheering section, so to speak. I have come into a place in my ministry after all these years to where at church, that's kind of the place that I am. I'm telling you, I just hug and kiss everything that moves. And it's just, I want them to feel so comfortable in kind of what you've done there. Of course, you've always done that. You have always been there to prop people, to instruct. You've been an instructor as long as I've known you. I mean, you've always do this, don't do that. That's not a good idea. Have you tried this?
Well, I want everyone to be better. And it's interesting, you're talking about hugging and all that. And so in the particular church movement that I was in previous to marriage, we did not hug.
Yeah.
And we did not clap.
Pentecostal side hug.
and we did not clap. So I became Pentecostal, and all of a sudden, hugging and clapping is just, it's like breathing. So I've had to learn those. But Jerry, it's interesting you say hugging, and we all need hugs, and we need, and they all need to be appropriate and all that. Yeah. And I tell you, I was having one day that, and I hope you don't think any less of me, and I hope you see the lesson in this illustration. But I was having a really tough day, and privately, I said, God, I would do anything for a hug today.
Wow.
And if you could just somehow arrange that, I'm not going to go out and ask people to do that. So we're driving, we're driving, and you were too far away. So, and we're driving, and we're, going to this place, and all of a sudden I see this person over here, and my wife says, well, something looks like it's going on over there. What's going on? I said, I don't know. And a couple of people went over to talk to the person and with their car and all that. I didn't understand what's going on. So I went over, and I said, hey, what's going on? Oh, I just ran out of gas. And I go, hey, no problem. You stay right here. I'll go get you. We'll get a can of gas, and I'll bring you some gas. So we went and got the little convenience store, got the little plastic thing, put gas in it, brought him gas and all that. And I tell the guys, he's had a tough life, and he was telling me a story while he's putting that in. I said, we'll see if it's only a gallon or so. I said, well, let's see if it'll start. So he got it started. He said, oh, thanks, appreciate it. I said, no. I said, which way you headed? And so he told me. I said, all right, well, follow me. And I said, we'll stop at this gas station, and I'll get you some gas, because you're not going to go very far with what you've got. Right. So we pulled up this place, and he said, well, how much? I said, well, you just put it in till it stops.
Wow.
And he had this big van, Jerry, and I'm like, oh, So anyway, so it's just spinning, it's up there, and I'm like, what have I done, So anyway, well, I'm trying to be real cool and everything. And he said, he said, this is more than enough. I said, no. I said, you're going to need it, and it's going to get you to wherever you need to go and all that. So it stopped, and put it back in the thing. And I said, God bless you, man. And he shook my hand. And while he was shaking my hand, he leans over and he gives me a hug.
Wow.
And I didn't expect that. I didn't, or anything, but it was the preciousness of that prayer. And I didn't really mean for it to cost me anything, but
that's priceless.
It was one of those moments that it was God was saying, it's all right.
Is that kind of like saying if you need a hug, you need to go out and do something that's huggable?
I don't know, and I don't always feel that way, and I would never ask a stranger.
I would have hugged you for half that.
I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah. Okay. I want to talk to you about your book.
Okay. Yeah, right. I know we've got
some
time to talk about it.
Don't give up. Great book.
That book.
Excellent book. And you've got a couple of things in here. I mean, obviously, I could go on and on about all of the stories and the quips that you have in here, but you've got in here on page 82, 83, the hidden value of friendship.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought that was very good. Friendships, I love this. Friendships lead to mentor relationships. So we kind of discussed that a little bit, the fact that the the mentor, the mentor, maybe you don't choose your father, maybe you discover them.
Yeah. And why would you want to have a mentor that you're not friends with?
Yeah.
I can overlook the fact that you may put mustard on your sandwich, um, you know, only if you overlook the fact that I put mayonnaise on my sandwich.
Yeah.
But we can still be friends because I'm not going to let mayonnaise or mustard stand in between a good friendship.
You've got on here, we should all do well to observe 3 levels of friendship. One is find someone that is older than you. You come down here. We need to develop a close friend with 1 or 2 friends our own age. And then finally, let us recognize the potential to become another's mentor.
Mm.
Friendships, then after that, you got friendships take time, relationships take even more time, which I love that quote right there.
Mm.
Friendships take time, relationships even take more time. But you've got 3 levels there. Talk about that for a moment.
Yeah, it's that cycle of life. We've got to have older people speaking into us, and older doesn't necessarily mean chronologically. It could be experientially that they have more experience in something.
Not necessarily an age.
Yeah, and so you've got more experience in something. I want to know about that. I have an affinity to. I want to be a part of that. The people our own age, or just a little bit younger, or just a little bit older, those are the people that we experience life with. We go with out to eat after church. Right. We're involved in sporting activities. We trade children to babysit and those kind of things. Those are the people that will help us through life. And then younger people, that we want to give back into the next community to make the world a little better place. I love the fact that I have doctors and dentists and people that take care of my hair that I've had for 20 plus years, and that I'm growing old with them, and that we've got this wonderful relationship. And I've been in the doctor's office on the very last visit before he's retired, and I've been there in tears, and he has too. And that doesn't happen all the time. And I'm not friends with every one of my doctors. I'm friendly with everyone,
sure.
But some you've developed a friendship with, and those are meaningful when you have those kind of things. And the people that cut my hair, I drive into the next county to have my hair cut.
Sure.
Because I do nothing to offend my hair, because if I do, it will leave and not come back. And so
I wouldn't know anything about that.
I know. And I've always said, I don't care what color my hair is as long as I have it. So it can be multicolored as far as I care. But those are the things in life. And Jerry, I think in each of us we really deep down want to leave something for the next generation. And that's why I wrote this book, because I wanted to leave something around for those who will come by, maybe who've not even been born yet, or maybe who are still playing with trucks and cars. But I wanted to have something, a collection of stories, brief things to encourage people. And it really is a book of encouragement. And that's why I wrote it. And I asked God to take it places where I could never go. And he's taken that to prisons and ladies' Bible studies, ladies who are overcoming addictions, and then common people just like you and me.
Excellent book. It really is. Once again, and then how can they get this?
That's available at the world's largest online retailer at Amazon.com. Just move up, don't give up. And it's a stories collection. And if you're not a reader, you can read 1 page at a time.
Well, that's the thing. It's just it's a collection of stories. It's beautiful little, the way it's written is something you can read in a few seconds and kind of take the essence of it with you through the day. I mean,
think about it for a while.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the other thing that's in the back there, Jerry, is that I've also there's everywhere I go, and every time I've ever spoken, somebody says, "Oh, I'd love to write a book." Well, in the back of my book, I give you an outline about how to write your book. I give you some prompts, and I even give you a prayer with scriptural references that you can pray about how to write your book. And so I just felt led for that. And then this interesting story. I have a dear friend who is the editor of my book, and she wrote the foreword. And I'm coming to the end of this, and my publisher says, "You don't have enough material." And I'm like, to me, that's like saying I don't have enough neckties. So I'm like, what do you mean I don't have enough material? So I'm just searching and I'm crying my heart out to my editor friend and all this. And I said, I in desperation, I said, I don't know what to do. I guess I can just put some recipes in the back and call it done. And I suppose I said the wrong thing, because my editor said to me, you will not be including any recipes in your book. So, friends, there are no recipes in my book.
Well, but what you do have back here, I didn't see that picture. What you do have back here is a honorable life events, quotes, sayings, expressions, speeches, people who have inspired you, and you got a whole list of these.
Yeah.
News events that inspired you, unusual. Now, what's the purpose in putting that at the end of it? Because you have, it's like you've got these in a place for them to write. So,
right. And yeah, and that's how I put that there. So those are writing prompts. So if you want to start writing your own story, but you don't know
okay,
how, and
okay.
you can begin with praying the prayer and reading the prayer and even looking up the scriptures that I have there for you.
Very good.
And then how you can start with those prompts and how you can begin working towards something that you could call a book or something.
I do want to say something before we step off the stage. You know, having a mentor is very important. Being a mentor is huge to me, and let me just kind of give you a biblical reference to it, because this is one of the most meaningful scriptures, I think, to me. From the book of Joshua, you hear these guys that are just, they were the baddest dudes in town. I mean, they were conquering, they were taking mountains, they were chasing giants, they literally were destroying everything. But by the time you get to the next book, Judges, they're hiding in holes. The Amalekites have got them literally, Gideon's, he's threshing wheat down in a hole, and you're not supposed to do it in a hole. You do it up on a mountain where you get some wind. I mean, it's just, but they were hiding from them because they would watch them get their food, and then they would come take it away from them, and which is the way a lot of people live today. And it really troubled me, because I thought, why is it that how did they transition so quickly from this mountain conquering place to hiding in mountains? What happened? Even by Judges chapter 6, where he's talking about Gideon. But there's a scripture in Judges chapter 3 that tells the story, I think, that explains why that happened. It said there was a generation that didn't know the Lord and did not remember the works of his hands.
Wow.
And somehow the baton was not passed to the next generation. In that situation, and the result was complete collapse. I mean, you remember the story where Joshua was crossing over the river, and they were all commanded. Each man was commanded to take a stone out of that miracle, basically, and bear it on their shoulders. Shoulder responsibility. And he said, "You'll take it on the other side." He said, "For this reason, that when your children ask you, that they will know exactly what it is that you had to do." And so I just, I find that fascinating, how that could take place, and how a generation.
And that same passage says, and that years later, the children who came by these collections of stones would ask, what are these stones mean?
Yes.
And in the Jewish tradition, it was an oral history. And so here it is that they were saying, well, children, let me tell you about what we did, or let me tell you about what our grandfather did, or our great grandfather did. And so I think every person has a story waiting to be told. And I think it is the mentor's responsibility to help bring that story to light.
Well, it places a responsibility on us. Thomas, I'm thankful for your friendship.
You're
Your
welcome.
friendship it's a treasure to me. And if I could isolate one word for you, it would be the word loyal. I think that phrase identifies you most of all, and it tells concerning the relationship that you have borne out to everybody that's known you. And I appreciate your friendship. You've been what I refer to as a dear friend. And I really love and appreciate you, Guy. I really do. I'm thankful for you, and I'm very excited about your future. I think and I believe that your best days are ahead, and I fully expect to hear things that are going to be incredible. Again, I want to say, pick up this book, Move Up. You will enjoy it. It's a great thing not to have, but it's a great gift to give to others. It doesn't have a lot of real big words in it. Just messing with you. No, it's it's perfect. But Thomas, I love you, man. I appreciate you so much. I really do.
It's been too fun.
Give my love to your bride. Tell her I said hello. And I hope to get to see you again. But
same here.
I want you to take care of yourself. And I will plan on catching you next time.
Very good.
All right, man.
Great seeing you, Jerry. God bless you, my friend. Goodbye.
All right. That's what we've got for this particular podcast.
I dropped my book, and I was hoping you weren't going to ask.
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
I dropped my book, and I was hoping you wouldn't ask me to read something.
If you could show me that,
pick it up off the floor.
All right, man. I'll talk to you later.
That's too funny. God bless you, my friend.
So this has been a good experience. We've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation with Thomas Harrison. If there's anything that you need, anything I can give for you, please don't hesitate to contact me and let me know. I love you guys, and I'll plan on seeing you next time. God bless you. Bye-bye.